Hi, my name is Karen Fabian and I'm the founder of Bare Bones Yoga, and I want to welcome you to video number 2 of the Bare Bones Yoga Learn Yoga Challenge. If you're just jumping in today and you're starting with this video, I want you to go back and view video number 1, and you'll see them right here on my YouTube channel listed out by video number. Video number 1 gives you the kickoff, the introduction, the mindset, the rationale behind this free training series on how to do yoga, and it will give you some really good baseline information about what we're about to do, not only today, but in the subsequent videos that follow over the next few weeks. So I'm going to dive right in. Again, I'm assuming you've watched video number 1. And this video is going to go over some specific poses. And again, if you haven't downloaded the instruction guide, the PDF instruction guide, go ahead and do that by clicking the link here in the description, which will take you to the landing page where you can download this free instruction guide. And in that, you'll see video number 1, which is the prior video. We went through child's pose, ragdoll, and mountain pose. And today in video number 2, we're going to go through forward fold, half lift, plank, low push-up, up dog, and down dog. So we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to dive right in. So these series of poses comprise the basics for doing a sun salutation A. And I'm going to go through each one individually, and then we'll put it together, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the related anatomy involved so that you can get a sense of what is happening not only in terms of the alignment but also the anatomy. So let's take the first piece. The first piece is the forward fold, and I talked a little bit about this in video number 1 when we looked at ragdoll. So setting the feet at hip width, we're folding down. And right out of the gate, you might say, well, I'm not flexible enough to touch my feet. So you don't really need to do that. You could fold, grab onto the elbows, or just let the arms hang. But again, going over what we went through before, what you might be experiencing is some tightness in the hamstrings. And your hamstrings begin on your sitting bones and end on the back of your knee. And they can get overly tight, especially if you do a lot of running or cycling, because they are primarily responsible for flexing, bending your knee. So in a forward fold, you could bend the knees a little bit to put a little bit of slack there and allow you to do that. We're starting this particular series from standing. So when I say forward fold, I'm really talking about something where the arms would go up and then you would bow. And you'll notice here, I bent my knees a little bit on the way down so that there is a little bit of fluidity there rather than locking the legs and folding like this, okay? And you'll also see I was really specific about bringing my hands through the middle of the body. I really like that versus the swan dive scenario, where right about here, the legs tend to lock and the low back tends to tighten up a little bit. Bringing the hands through the midline is a little bit more anatomically sound, maybe a little even a little bit more comfortable. You may notice an immediate difference versus extending the arms out, because now I've kind of made my body a lot bigger rather than working right towards the midline, which can be really nice in terms of doing it in a very smooth and comfortable way. The other things to keep in mind is we want to make this fold a smooth transition. We don't want to abruptly move down kind of with a lot of pace. We want to have it be a controlled fold. And I see that a lot in yoga classes, that people are really flinging themselves down towards the ground. So it really should be controlled and a muscular movement rather than just a collapse. So after the forward fold, the next thing we get to is the piece or the motion called half lift, halfway lift. And I actually don't use this phraseology, but some teachers say come up to a flat back. And I don't really say that because the back really isn't flat. The natural curves of the spine are always there, even when we're trying to create what we call axial extension, lengthening along the axis of the body, which is the spine. So even here, as I create a long spine, I still have the curves. I can feel the lumbar curve here. So what I like to say is just lift halfway up. It's basic, but it does the trick. What happens sometimes though, when we come down in the fold and then we want to lift halfway up, is a lot of people end up someplace here. And this can be, again, because of those tight hamstrings. The spine will flex, so now the lumbar curve, which is concave, now bulges out to that more kyphotic, that's the anatomical term, the kyphotic curve. So for those folks, and really in general for everybody, I like to say just bend the knees a little bit. Now I can get that axial extension, same as when I'm here, but I've got a little bend in the knees rather than ending up here. So putting those two together, I could reach up, I could fold, and I could lift halfway up. So those are the two pieces. So now let's proceed, let's go into plank. So plank is the top of a push-off. And I want you to notice here, the body is very long, nothing is dropping, the head's not dropping. It's basically as if I were here, right? But I've just fallen to the floor. And I want you to notice here, in particular, the position of my head. So I really need to use a little bit of both rooting down, right, and drawing up through the crown of the head to keep the head centered on the body. And this is what is known as anatomical position, and we see this in a lot of poses, or qualities of this in a lot of poses. And when we move into plank, because we're so often flexing the cervical spine or the neck, because we're looking down at our phones, the same thing will happen in plank. So you'll come down and you'll see the head drop. So you want to make sure that you're pressing actively, lifting up, but keeping the gaze down, lifting up enough so the crown of the head is forward. You'll notice too, I'm really active through my feet. So I'm pressing back through the bottoms of my feet and pressing into the ground. I'm not elevating the shoulders. I'm not unnecessarily dropping the shoulders. But I'm pressing into the ground, which starts to bring into play a muscle known as the serratus anterior. And this keeps the shoulder blades flat on the back because it connects the rib cage to the spine. And this muscle helps keep the shoulders steady rather than allowing the shoulder blades to elevate. So here in plank, I push into the ground and the legs are active, the head is steady. So let's talk now about upward dog. So instead of a long spine in up dog, I have a back bend. So I start to kind of intentionally create more of a bend through the whole spine. And so this is now, something like this where we're talking spinal extension. So upward facing dog really depends on having alignment from the shoulders to the wrists. So here, I get really good support to press up, right? I'm just talking about the arms here. I'm not having my hands out in front. I'm not having my hands behind. I have the elbows right over the wrists, hug the elbows in, and then I can come up. But you can see how this posture is very arm dependent. And what many students do is overdo the arms and forget about the contribution of the legs to support the work that the upper body is doing. So in upward dog, we not only want to have the shoulders over the wrists and actively pressing down, but we want to be pressing into the tops of the feet too. And this allows us, by leveraging both the front of the pose and the back of the pose, to create the bend in the spine. Now, sometimes what people will do is they'll resist the bend, right? But remember, we want to relax through the front line of the body, because in order to bend the spine, we have to relax the core muscles. And so we're talking here about the rectus abdominis, which runs from the sternum down to the pubic bone. And we want to relax there so we can get some bend, and that's where the back bend comes from. So coming into upward dog, we'd have shoulders over wrists, tops of the feet flat, pressing into all 4 points, allowing the core to relax and opening through the front of the body. So you can probably see this is a big stretch for the front. So we're talking about stretching muscles like the pectorals, pec minor and pec major. These are muscles that get overly contracted when we hunch a lot. And so opening the front line of the body is really, really healthy because it gives the shoulders and the front area here around the chest a chance to broaden, which we don't do a lot during the day. So in terms of some modifications, we can come halfway up, right? So that might be enough. And that's one way to do it. I wouldn't recommend tucking the toes. This can get in the way of the back bend. But I would say coming halfway up is a nice way to modify. You can also come up onto the forearms, but that can sometimes be challenging if you're moving in a paced vinyasa class or a paced class where you're kind of moving rather with, I don't want to say fast, but with a little bit of pace. But again, that is another possible way to do it. So when we're thinking about what comes next, now we're going to talk about downward dog. So downward facing dog, let's just start from hands and knees, is similar to up dog in that there is a good amount of arm strength required. So we're really pushing off the ground to lift the hips up. And most people, if they've done this pose, they experience some lengthening in the hamstrings. So again, talking about the muscles in the back of the leg. The legs are straight, so that's the stretch that the hamstring gets. But because there can be some limitations there, it's helpful again, just like in the forward fold, to bend the knees slightly. So here's the basic of the pose. And you might wonder, what's kind of the point of the posture? So many different poses have several things that they do. In downward dog, we're really talking not only about lengthening the hamstrings, but lengthening the spine as well. But we've got to use the arms for leverage. And the low point is the wrist. So without any active pushing off the ground, you're going to fall right into your hands. So I like to always suggest to people as they come into the posture, set the hands at shoulder width distance apart, spread the fingers out, set the feet at hip width distance apart, and consider the distance between the feet and the hands as a reflection of the amount of push-off you're going to have. So if I have my hands very far forward, it's easier for me to fall down. If I have my hands very far back, I lose a lot of length that I could be getting at the pose. So I have to find the right spot where I can push off the ground, maybe bend the knees a little bit, but still push off so I can lift my hips. Sometimes in class you'll hear teachers say, lift your sitting bones. You might wonder what that means. So your sitting bones are the base of your pelvis, and we're trying to tip those up to the sky. Sometimes people say, lift your hips. But those are where the sitting bones are, and that's the action. So as we come into the pose and push off the arms and bend the knees a little bit if we want, we're going to lift up from the sitting bones, creating that length in the spine. And if you do feel some discomfort in the wrist, just start to bring the hands back until you can find the right spot. The feet are at hip width, the hands are at shoulder width. And keeping in mind that the longer the distance between the two, you might feel a little more stretch. The other piece to keep in mind is not to lock the legs. So as you look towards your legs, just be sure that you're not hyperextending, that you have a little bit of bend in the knees so that you don't lock out, and that can be not so great for the joints. So if you're interested in learning more about the point of every pose, or even just these poses that we've talked about, I break down each yoga pose in my anatomy manual here, the Bare Bones Yoga Guide to Anatomy. And the concepts of using length to create distance between hands and feet, the longer the base of a pose, the more stretch it provides. That's one of the anatomical concepts I discuss in my latest book, Structure and Spirit. So I want to just wrap up this video 2 by letting you know just a couple of benefits of participating here in the Bare Bones Yoga Learn Yoga Challenge. And if you've downloaded the guide, you already know that, but I want to bring up a couple of things that aren't here. So for every video, one viewer is going to get a free book of my latest book, Structure and Spirit, which breaks down both the anatomy and the more spiritual side of yoga practice, and also includes meditations that you can do and some journaling exercises. So it's really an active read. And by the end of it, I hope that you've not only learned more about yoga, but maybe learned a little bit more about yourself. And one viewer of this video, by commenting below, is going to be picked at random to get one of these books for free. But every single person watching this video is eligible to get this book for $26.99 instead of $31.99 on Amazon, and my anatomy manual for $50 instead of $65. And all you need to do to get these at this discount is send me an email, Karen@barebonesyoga.com, and I will correspond with you and let you know how to pay for them and how we can get your address, and I can send them to you in the mail. So this video here is video number 2, and in the guide I also let you know that you can download for $10, only $10 each, full yoga class sequences on the online classes page of my website. So as we're going through the videos and you want to start applying what you're learning to full yoga practices, you can download one of my classes. I have 3 on the online classes page of my website for just $10. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to email me, Karen@barebonesyoga.com. This is video number 2, Sun Salutation A poses. And if you've missed video number 1, like I said, you can go back and do that. If you want to go around through my website, there are a number of different things you can download as well. Some different anatomy downloads and some teacher-related downloads around sequencing. One is right on my homepage. So I know this is a lot of information, but keep in mind this is going to be a series. It's going to take us through till the end of January. The Bare Bones Yoga Learn Yoga Challenge is designed to give you free private instruction through video so you can learn yoga and go into class with confidence and have a really good understanding of both the anatomy and the alignment of many, many of the key yoga poses that you'll do. So I hope you've enjoyed this. This is video number 2 of the Bare Bones Yoga Learn Yoga Challenge. My name is Karen Fabian. See you at video number 3. And again, the website is barebonesyoga.com. Namaste.